of the Mafia and of witness protection from the inside, as told by a mobster and his children. Henry Hill became infamous back in 1990 when the movie Goodfellas dramatized his life. But what was real life like for Hill and his family? As we told you last fall, his son and daughter, who've taken the names Gregg and Gina, wrote a book about it titled On the Run. They say their lives were only made worse by witness protection, thanks to a fearful existence created by their father. Here's a look at the life they were running from. Henry Hill, played by Ray Liotta in Goodfellas.
As far back as I could remember, I always wanted to be a gangster.
The real Henry Hill wasn't born into the mob. Half Italian and half Irish, he had to earn his way in. At a young age, he became obsessed with the idea of wise guys and gangsters.
In my neighborhood, where I came from in Brooklyn, these are the guys with the silk suits and the diamond rings and the beautiful woman.
And everybody else you knew, like your father, was just getting up every morning and going to work.
Yeah, with a lunch pail, and the whole block was like Normalville.
Henry Hill did everything he could to make it out of Normalville and into organized crime. For some 20 years, he lived the mob life until May of 1980, when it all came to a crashing halt. Hill was arrested on drug charges and faced serious jail time. The government offered him a deal. If he testified against fellow mob members, the charges would be dropped and he would be protected.
I was in trouble. I knew I was a dead man, no matter how you cut it. If I stayed in prison, I was dead. If I went out on the street, I was dead. So, so my choice was already made.
Hill's only choice was to enter the Federal Witness Protection Program. Created in 1967, the program provides a new identity, security, and relocation in exchange for testimony. So you made the deal?
I made the deal. Signed a paper, contract.
And how many times did you testify?
Oh, 9 major cases.
Gregg was 13 and Gina just 11 when their father made his deal with the government. Though out of witness protection now, they insisted we disguise them, saying only their spouses know who their father is and what he used to do.
He was what, in mob parlance, they call an earner. He had scams from gambling, extortion, arson that brought money into the mob.
Gregg and Gina have limited contact with their father today. Growing up, they tried hard to ignore his criminal activities, no matter how obvious.
When he got involved in drug dealings, he would have hefty bags, a number of them, filled with marijuana in our living room.
But did you say, I'm living with my father is a criminal?
No.
My father is involved in illegal things?
Nope. Dad was just a wangler.
We tried our best to ignore it and live our separate lives and do things that normal kids do.
Any chance of being normal kids ended the day the family entered witness protection and was told they had to leave their home on New York's Long Island. You're angry.
I'm very angry. Up until that time, all my father's exploits really only affected him. This was the first time we started feeling the impact of what he was doing. And to be told that we were leaving forever, it was a hard fact to sink in.
It happened literally overnight. Gregg and Gina had to pack as much as they could into plastic garbage bags and then were taken away. Henry Hill, who also has a book out, says he had no choice.
Eddie, I got news here. They'd have locked my kids in a refrigerator if I'd have left them behind to get me back there.
Your friends?
My friends?
Your former friends?
Yeah, my friends.
The government first hid the family in Omaha, Nebraska, land of rolling cornfields, fresh air, and great open spaces. The Hills were given $1,500 a month and a house to rent. But Gregg and Gina felt a million miles from home.
I thought we stood out like a sore thumb. My father had jet black hair, thick Brooklyn accent. My mother had jet black hair, thick accent. And the first place we go out to dinner is Godfather's Pizza. True story.
The irony was there.
The irony was there.
And while witness protection was good at hiding people, it didn't help at all with an alibi. The family says it was on its own to reinvent their past, right down to a new last name.
The only thing they told us was, don't tell anyone you're from New York. We used the cover story that my mother and sister came up with, that my father worked for the government.
And Henry Hill was working for the government, flying back and forth between Omaha and New York testifying against his old mob partners. How many people did your testimony send to jail?
About 50.
50. You were a damn good witness, weren't you?
I was, I was scared to death at the time, but I was telling the truth.
Back in New York, there was a $500,000 price on Hill's head, but the mob death sentence had no apparent effect.
He just refused to make any kind of effort to change.
He didn't buy into the program.
Not at all.
He made calls to his drug dealing friends. He made calls to his girlfriends in New York.
Saying, "This is Henry Hill, I'm in Omaha."
Exactly.
The information made its way back to Jimmy Burke, who had put the bounty on Hill. In the movie Goodfellas, Robert De Niro plays Burke, a cold-blooded killer. In real life, Hill's testimony put Burke behind bars, and Burke was heard in court telling associates to get him.
They overheard him say, "I know that guy is in the Midwest." That was enough to spook the feds to call us and say,
"Pack up."
"We'll pick you up tomorrow morning. Your
Tomorrow morning?
Yes, tomorrow morning.
After just 2 months in Omaha, the Hills were on the move again, changing their names and reinventing their past. Their next stop was Independence, Kentucky, surrounded by tobacco fields and horses. The population, 8,000. And was this culture shock?
Quite a bit. My father, oddly enough, was the one who probably adapted better than any of us. He had the cowboy hat and Willie Nelson music playing soon after we arrived.
According to Gregg and Gina, their father spent his days at the local racetrack gambling and his nights drinking. You were always unhappy about this, weren't you?
Yeah, I wanted him to get a job. I didn't care what it was. I wanted him to get a job.
Did you want him to be like a normal father?
Yes, that's all I ever asked. That's all I ever wanted.
In Kentucky, Hill found a way to supplement his $1,500 monthly stipend. He co-wrote a tell-all article in Sports Illustrated about his role in a point-shaving scheme at Boston College. What did the FBI say when they knew that your father received $10,000 from Sports Illustrated?
They went nuts. In fact, they threatened to throw him out of the program.
But they still needed Hill's testimony. His safety, however, was compromised, and after about a year in independence, the Hills were uprooted once again. The family was taken this time to Redmond, Washington, east of Seattle, on the shores of Lake Washington.
It was the first place that we went to, which almost seemed like it would be a good place to hide. It had that spooky, foggy feel to it with a lot of transient families.
In Redmond, life began to unravel. Their father had run-ins with the local police and was arrested several times for drunk driving. Gregg says he and his father began to fight. One day, when he was 19, Gregg could take it no more.
One of the most painful things I ever did was leave my mother and my sister. But I knew if I had stayed there, something terrible would have happened.
Was this hard for you?
Yes, it ended in a very bad physical fight between my brother and my father, and I didn't know that my brother left town. And I thought I'd see him in a couple of days after things died down, like they always did. And he never came back.
What did your mother say?
She cried just as hard as I did.
And your father?
I don't think he shed a tear. I never bothered to ask him.
You were angry?
No.
Hurt?
Remorseful. I sad. Couldn't believe it that I had
Forced your son to leave.
forced my son to leave. It was my fault he left.
Today, Gregg is an attorney and Gina is raising a family. Both say they rarely talk to their father. We played some of their interview for him. Here's your son, Gregg. Take a look at this.
My father, that was a closed chapter. I left him behind.
Forever.
Forever. He's caused so much pain and devastation to our family that I'm not preoccupied with it. I'll never forgive him for it, but I've moved on.
Still a lot of years left.
You want to heal that breach.
Amends takes a long time, and sometimes it never happens.
Just last spring, Hill was charged with drug possession after narcotics were allegedly found in his luggage at an airport. Is any of this book, telling the story of witness protection, telling the story of Henry Hill, telling your story, is any of this revenge?
None of it. All this book is, for more than 20 years, we've lived with him telling our story, with others telling our story. This book is our story, on our terms, in our voice.